So, welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the rest day because we're about to break down something that I think is being completely misread by almost every outlet covering this World Cup. And before I get into it, I want to say something to anyone just finding this channel. I'm not a scout. I don't work for the FA. I've never held a coaching badge. I'm not on Thomas Tuchel's staff, and I don't have inside access to St. George's Park. I'm just one guy who watches the data, watches the tape, and tries to use pattern recognition to figure out what's actually happening on the pitch. That's it. And if you think I'm wrong, good, push back. That's how we all get sharper. Okay, let's get into it. Saturday afternoon at MetLife Stadium, England walked out as favorites against a Panama side that had already been eliminated, already lost every match they'd played at this tournament, and had nothing left to play for except pride. England, on the other hand, had everything to play for. Win, and they top Group L. Slip up, and they drop to second behind Croatia and get a tougher route through the knockouts. The pre-match story everyone told was simple. England would dominate the ball, Panama would sit in a low block, and eventually England's quality would break through. That's the story every major outlet ran with. For about 15 minutes, that story looked right. Then it didn't. Because what actually happened on that pitch tells a completely different story than the one being sold to you. And I think the entire mainstream framing of this match is missing the point, not missing it in a small way. Missing it in the way that happens when people watch a tight scoreline and call it bad luck instead of asking what that scoreline is actually revealing. What I want to do today is show you exactly what Panama did to England and why it worked, even without getting the win. I want to introduce a concept I call the mirror test, and I want to show you why a team with nothing to lose and a disciplined back five can expose more about a tournament favorite in 90 minutes than 3 months of pre-tournament hype ever could. Then I want to walk you through the numbers, because the numbers tell you something the scoreline never will. And finally, I want to talk about what I'm calling the knockout time bomb sitting underneath England's group stage, because I don't think people understand what kind of trouble this performance is setting up for the round of 32. Let's go. To understand what happened against Panama, you need to understand the mirror test. Here's the idea. When a heavily favored team plays a side with nothing to lose, no fear of going further out of the tournament because they're already eliminated, and a structure built entirely around defending rather than competing for the ball, something interesting happens. All the noise disappears. There's no transition chaos, no end-to-end football, no moments where individual brilliance can hide inside the rhythm of an open game. What's left is a mirror. The favorite has to create something out of structure, out of patience, out of actual decision-making, because the underdog isn't giving them anything else to work with. And what that mirror shows you is whether a team's quality is actually systemic or whether it's been borrowed from chaos the whole time. Panama set up in a 5-man backline in a 5-4-1 shape that live coverage described as comfortable and well-organized, springing counters whenever England turned the ball over. They had nothing to gain from the result. They'd already lost to Ghana and to Croatia, both by a single goal, and they were already on a flight home, regardless of what happened in New Jersey. So Panama did the one thing a team with nothing to lose can always do better than a team under pressure. They defended without anxiety, and in doing that, they handed England a mirror, and the reflection wasn't flattering. Now let's get into the numbers, because this is where the story gets specific. England recorded just 0.49 expected goals in the entire first half. Panama, defending the whole time, recorded 0.15. For context, that means England's best attacking spells, the moments with Saka and Rashford cutting inside from both flanks, were generating less than half a goal's worth of real quality in 45 minutes against a side with no marquee Premier League names and a goalkeeper most casual fans had never heard of before this tournament. Here's the second number, and I think this one should be getting more attention than it is. England failed to lead at halftime in all 3 of their group stage matches. That has only happened to England once before in their last 10 World Cup appearances, back in 2014. 2014 was the tournament where England went out in the group stage. I'm not saying that's destiny, I'm saying it's a pattern, and patterns are exactly what the mirror test is built to reveal. Third number, Panama completed 780 passes across their first two World Cup matches this tournament, just 25 fewer than they managed across all three games at their previous finals appearance back in 2018. They also recorded more high turnovers and more pressing sequences in two games this tournament than they did in three games in 2018. That's not a team that showed up to defend and survive. That's a team that showed up more aggressive, more organized, and more dangerous than the version of Panama that lost 6-1 to this same England side back in 2018, England's biggest World Cup win in their history. The gap between those two Panama teams should worry England fans more than the scoreline from Saturday does. Okay, now I want to do the thing I always try to do, which is present the strongest possible case for the other side. Because if you can't argue the other side convincingly, you probably haven't understood the situation. The case for England goes like this. England were already through to the knockout rounds before kickoff. Reece James was missing through injury. Thomas Tuchel made 5 changes from the Ghana game, rotating in Jarell Quansah, Morgan Rogers, Nico O'Reilly, and others, essentially using this match to manage fitness and depth heading into the knockouts. Mark Guehi set an England record for most completed passes by any England player at a major tournament in the previous match against Ghana. Declan Rice has created more chances than any other player through the first 2 match days of this entire World Cup, a feat only matched twice before in England history, both times by David Beckham. England beat Croatia 4-2 in their opening match. By any reasonable measure, England's underlying talent and depth are not in question. That's the Steelman, and it's not a weak one. But here's what it doesn't explain. It doesn't explain why a team with that much individual quality has now failed to generate even half a goal of expected output across back-to-back matches against 2 of the lowest-ranked sides remaining in the tournament. It doesn't explain why Saka, one of the most dangerous wide players in world football, was described by people watching live as hitting tame crosses and weak shots into the near post. It doesn't explain why live commentary kept landing on the same words: sluggish, predictable, the exact same critique that followed the Ghana draw, now following England into a completely different match against a completely different opponent using a completely different game plan. When the same weakness shows up against 2 different teams in 2 different matches, that's not bad luck. That's a mirror doing exactly what a mirror does. Now I want to bring in the bigger picture, because while everyone was watching England struggle to break down Panama, something else was happening in the other Group L fixture that I think changes the entire shape of this story. Croatia took a 1-0 lead against Ghana in the simultaneous match. That result, regardless of what happened in New Jersey, locked England into second place in Group L behind Croatia, which means England are heading into the round of 32 with a tougher draw than they'd have gotten by finishing top, with Portugal looming as the likely opponent in Toronto. Think about what that means. England just spent 90 minutes failing to create meaningful chances against a back 5 with nothing to lose, and their reward for that performance, combined with results elsewhere, is a harder knockout draw than first place would have given them. And here's the part that should actually concern Tuchel. Every team England faces from this point forward in a single elimination format has every incentive to do exactly what Panama just did. Sit in, stay compact, make England solve a structural puzzle instead of playing an open game. Ghana already showed this works for a full 90 minutes. Panama just showed it works again, against a different shape with different personnel. That's 2 data points in 3 matches. In a knockout round, you don't get to shrug off a pattern like that and hope it disappears. You either fix it in training before the next match, or someone with even better defensive organization than Panama makes you pay for it once there's no group stage cushion left to absorb the mistake. That's the knockout time bomb. England have 3 matches of evidence that disciplined, low-block opposition causes them real problems creating clear-cut chances, and the very nature of knockout football means every remaining opponent is now incentivized to copy that blueprint. The clock on fixing this isn't 60 days like a diplomatic memorandum. It's however many days Tuchel has before the round of 32 kicks off. Quick reminder of where everyone actually stands here. Panama becomes one of just a handful of nations in World Cup history to lose all of their group matches at a finals tournament, joining a short list that historically includes Mexico, El Salvador, and Canada. That's a brutal campaign by any measure, and it makes what they did defensively against England even more notable. A team with nothing left to play for, outworked, out-organized, and out-disciplined a team fighting for top spot in the group. England's only previous defeat to a CONCACAF nation at a World Cup came in 1950 against the United States. Since then, 3 wins and 3 draws against that confederation. Panama didn't beat that record on Saturday, but they got closer to making England look uncomfortable than almost anyone expected from a side with back-to-back losses and 0 goals scored heading into this match. So here's where I think this leaves us heading into the knockout rounds. Scenario 1. Tuchel uses the next several days to identify exactly why England keep generating low expected goals totals against low blocks, fixes the spacing and the decision-making in the final third, and England arrive in the round of 32 sharper than they've looked all tournament. This is the outcome every England fan wants, and it's entirely possible given the talent in that squad. Scenario 2, the pattern repeats. Whoever England draws sits in, frustrates them again, and England scrape through on a set piece or a moment of individual brilliance rather than a clearly created chance. The same way they were hoping Rashford's free kick would find the net instead of bouncing just wide. Scenario 3, and this is the one I think the data points toward most clearly right now. The issue isn't personnel, it's structural, and it shows up again in the round of 32 against a side organized enough to make it count, ending England's tournament earlier than the pre-tournament hype suggested. 3 things I'd watch closely over the next week. First, does Tuchel change England's approach against low blocks specifically? More width, faster ball circulation, different runners in behind? Or does he run the same shape that struggled against both Ghana and Panama? Second, does Declan Rice, who's been creating more chances than anyone else in this tournament, get fully reintegrated into the first 11 for the knockout rounds because his chance creation numbers suggest England's underlying process is better than the finished product on the scoreboard? Third, watch the actual round of 32 draw confirmation. If it is Portugal, you're looking at a side with real quality and real patience, exactly the kind of opponent who punishes the pattern we just watched twice in a row. If you want to check my work here, go look at the underlying expected goals numbers from the Ghana and Panama matches side by side. Go look at Gay's pass completion record and Rice's chance creation numbers from the official tournament data. Go look at Panama's pressing numbers compared to their 2018 campaign. All of it is public. All of it points the same direction. And I'll leave you with this question. When a team that's already eliminated, with nothing to play for except pride, can hold a World Cup favorite to under half a goal of real quality for 45 straight minutes, twice in 3 matches, is that bad luck? Or is that the mirror finally showing you what was always going to be true the moment England ran into a knockout match against a side that knows how to sit in and make them work for it? I don't know which way this goes once the knockouts begin. I don't think anyone fully does yet, but I think what we just watched against Panama is exactly the kind of evidence that decides World Cups. All right, guys, that's it for today. We'll see how this plays out when the knockout rounds begin. Take care of yourselves.